The National School of Government, Strategic Plan 2025 to 2030. Building on the last 5 years, responding to developmental priorities, looking ahead, and implementing our strategy. The mission of the National School of Government is to cultivate a professional and capable public sector through education, training, and development initiatives, responding to developmental growth for the benefit of society, and implementing our strategy. The mission of the National School of Government is to cultivate a professional and capable public governance and policy education, training, and development initiatives, responding to achieve outcome 1 for the NSG society. A capable and professional public sector by embedding constitutional governance, fostering a professional and integrating digital skills through education areas like training, governance, data analytics, and AI. Outcome 1 to support outcome 2, a capable and professional public sector governed by embedding targeted capacities to fostering professional and integrating digital skills through education areas like training, governance, data analytics, NSG will grow to support outcome 2 through an NSG public sector governed by embedding targeted capacities to fostering professional programs will focus on ethical leadership, diversity, governance, social justice. Finally, to achieve outcome 4, NSG will promote professional excellence by implementing targeted capacity facilitation framework, programs will focus on ethical leadership, diversity, governance, social justice. Finally, to achieve outcome 4, NSG will promote professional excellence by implementing targeted capacity facilitation framework, programs will focus on ethical leadership, focusing on education and justice, eliminate finally to achieve outcome 4 by 2030, we aim to achieve professional target impact by ensuring public officials engage in policy focusing on responsible government authorities, and finally to achieve outcome 4 by 2030.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for accepting our invitation to register for this exciting webinar on the 3rd of December at 11 o'clock on this online platform that we have. Our theme for this webinar, or let me start with the topic, is Illuminating the Unseen, Building Inclusive Workplaces that Honor Invisible Strengths. So let me take one step back and introduce myself. My name is Craig Jansen. I'm from the National School of Government. I'm a manager in the Chief Directorate, Senior Management and Professional Development, responsible for HRM&D interventions in the National School of Government. So a little bit more about our topic. Our topic aims, the webinar will attempt to explore the impact of invisible disabilities in the workplace and the need for inclusive systems that empower everyone. You, our participants, we hope will learn how to recognize invisible disabilities, challenge the stigmas attached to that, and apply practical strategies to foster empathy, accessibility, and a culture where all individuals' strengths and values are supported. So the purpose of this session, why do we host this webinar? This year's DRAM, or Disability Rights Awareness Month, which ran from the 3rd of November and ending today on the 3rd of December, under the theme of creating strategic multi-sectoral partnerships for a disability inclusive society, will reinforce our national commitment to advancing the rights, inclusion, and empowerment of persons with disabilities, thus ensuring equal participation, dignity, and opportunity across all sectors of society. We aim to explore how organizations can create environments that recognize, accommodate, and empower all as it relates to invisible disabilities such as chronic illnesses, mental health conditions, learning disabilities, and neurological differences. As we progress now into our first presentation, I want to encourage everyone to listen attentively to the presentations being made. We will have a Q&A session after our second presentation. So in saying that, I'm stating that we would have two presentations. After the second presentation, we would have a Q&A session. However, if you look at the bottom of your screens, there is a tab that says Q&A. At any time, if you feel you have a question you would like to ask, please pose your question in the Q&A forum, and our team working in the background would then give attention to it. All questions that are filtered for our facilitators would be responded to both facilitators after both presentations have been offered. In opening of presentation one, beyond what meets the eye, building inclusive systems for inclusive disabilities. Here, disability rights awareness. Wait. I'm sorry, apologies, colleagues. My technology is failing me. The first presentation theme is beyond what meets the eye, building inclusive systems for invisible disabilities. This year's Disability Rights Awareness Month is observed under the theme creating multi-sectoral partnership for disability inclusive society from the 3rd to the 3rd of December, as I indicated. The month-long campaign reaffirms the universality, interdependence, and fundamental human rights of persons with disabilities that guarantee full enjoyment without discrimination, and also the need to promote awareness, inclusion, and empowerment of persons with disabilities across South Africa. Our presenter for this first session is Mr. Dani Maree. He's a specialist in disability equality training. And just a short little introduction of Dani. Dani is a respected specialist in disability equality training, inclusive employer services, and universal design and access. With extensive experience spanning training delivery, access audits, advisory services, and thought leadership engagements. Over the years, he has facilitated numerous capacity building sessions, organizational audits, and keynote presentations that empower institutions to embed inclusion, accessibility, and universal access at policy, programmatic, and operational levels. His expertise is grounded in sector-wide influence, supported by active participation in key governance and professionalization structures. Dani serves on the Tourism Sector Human Resource Development Executive Committee and Tourism Professionalization Strategy Working Group, and the Council for the Built Environment Transformation Forum. He further contributes his specialist insights as a committee member of the CBE, which is the Council for Built Environment, Health, Safety, Public Protection, and Universal Access, and plays a transformative role on Nedbank SA's Transformation Committee, Access to Banks. With a reputation for advancing accessible environments and championing disability inclusion across industries, Dani continues to influence national practice standards and strengthen organizational cultures towards equity, dignity, and universal participation. Dani, I hope I've done justice to introducing yourself. I would now hand over the forum to you to present our first presentation for this webinar. Thank you, Dani.
Thank you, Program Director, for that very warm welcome. And thank you for the opportunity for me to represent our National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities. I'm going to go directly into my presentation. I'm just going to share it. Can you confirm if that is visible?
Not yet. It's coming through now. You can just put it on slide mode, presentation mode, and then we can progress. You may go ahead, Dani.
Thank you. And yes, we are celebrating the 3rd of December Just background about the National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities. We are one of the largest organizations in South Africa representing persons with disabilities, no matter what your disability is. And our vision, like you have mentioned, Mr. Program Director, is an inclusive and equitable society where the human rights of all are upheld and protected. And then our mission is advocating, lobbying, and raising awareness for and with persons, meaning that we acknowledge that persons without disabilities must work together with persons with disabilities in achieving collaborative social and economic inclusion through innovation partnerships such as this one, research, development, and services. I want to start off my presentation by taking you back a little bit, just to set the scene. I do hope that most of the audience are familiar with the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities that was signed off by our government in December 2015, and that it is going to become the Disability Act within most likely the next 2 years. And there are certain definitions that I'm using for this presentation, and it's impairment, disability, person with a disability, social model in addressing disability, and reasonable accommodation. And the reason I'm doing this, it's very important for you to understand what is the difference between all of these definitions that I've just mentioned. So if you go to impairment on page 8 of the white paper, it states that impairment is a perceived or actual feature in the person's body or functioning that may result in a limitation or loss of activity or restricted participation of the person in society and life. I'm going to take myself as an example. I'm a person with post-lingual hearing loss. So it means that I was born with an acquired language, and I lost a certain percentage of my hearing later in life. That is also why I might not pronounce a word correct during the presentation. So that's my impairment. I cannot be cured. I cannot be, it can't be rectified. I'm not sick. I'm not ill. That is my impairment. And I'm quite capable in doing what I'm doing. I'm busy now with this webinar. I'm sitting in a quiet environment, and I am a person with an impairment. So there's 5 impairments that you need to take note of. So the first one is physical, which is quite obvious. It is all the visible impairments, persons making use of assistive devices, for example. Then you've got sensory impairments. That includes hearing impairments, persons that is deaf, persons with vision impairments, or persons that's blind. I'm not mentioning all of them. Intellectual is your typical learning impairments, Down syndrome. Then psychosocial, the word mental has been removed. Again, this is according to the white paper. And your neurological impairments that was added. So from sensory going down is your invisible impairments. So what is disability then? And I don't want to confuse you. We still refer to persons with disabilities in our organization, but it's very important to note the difference between the impairment and the disability. So disability on page 4 of the white paper says that disability is imposed by society. Very important. When a person with one of those 5 impairments, physical, psychosocial, intellectual, neurological, and or sensory impairment, is denied access to full participation in all aspects of life. And when society fails to uphold the rights and specific needs of individuals with impairments. So then we move on to what is persons with disabilities on page 11 of the white paper. And it states persons with disabilities include those, again, those impairments, physical, psychosocial, intellectual, neurological, and sensory impairments, which as a result of various attitudinal, communication, physical, and information barriers are hindered in participating fully and effectively in society on an equal basis with others. So you've got 5 impairments and you've got those 4 barriers. Again, I'm going to take myself as an example. If I was in a room, there was an aircon on, there were people speaking, I would not be able to communicate at all. So that would be a barrier for me. Attitudinal barrier would be a person at reception that would not know that by giving a person with a vision impairment just a printed braille page, assuming that is the way that person is communicating, which is not correct. It might be a person with a vision impairment that's using a larger font. So it is those barriers that is making a person with an impairment a person with a disability. So then, social model of disability that we are embracing says the social model does not locate the problem within the person with one of those 5 impairments. Rather, it acknowledges and it emphasizes the barriers in the environment, those 4 barriers that I've just mentioned, which disable the person with the impairment aimed at inclusion rather than exclusion of persons with disabilities from mainstream life. So we do acknowledge on the left-hand side the medical model because anybody with one of those impairments will have to have a medical intervention, rehabilitation, medical care, going to the hospital. That is still true, but we are not saying that we are fixing a person because they are sick or ill. We are saying it's a social problem. It's about social inclusion. Social action must be taken. Our attitudes must change. It's a human rights issue. Policies must be changed. It's a social change, individual and collective responsibility. That is why you are part of this webinar today. And we need to look at the environment as well. I've got 2 figures on the screen. I just want to mention why I am describing exactly what is on the screen. I do not know if anybody in the audience is a person that's got a vision impairment or that is blind. So it's important for me to convey everything that is on the screen for everybody to understand what I'm referring to. So the medical model has yellow arrows pointing to a person using a wheelchair saying, "Fix me, I'm ill." But we are saying, no, this is a social model that we are focusing on with the yellow arrows focusing out. And we are saying, change society, and some of the medical rehabilitation elements are still there. And that is why there is 4 small blue arrows facing to the person using the wheelchair. On this slide, at the bottom, there is 3 circles. Pre-1994, exclusion. The minority were outside the big circle, the blue, yellow, and black dots. And then the majority was inside, representing the green dots. Then we went to segregation as a country. And all that happened was the minority were just put into one small circle, but still they were not part of the majority. Then there's one word I would like you to please erase from your memory today is the word integration, and people are still using it. And integration was born not a couple of years, during the 2000s. And there is basically no difference between the segregation and integration, because with integration, that same circle with the minority was just put inside the big circle with the majority. And we are now, we are 3rd of December 2025, we were supposed to be already at inclusion. I know we are not, but that is the aim of what we need to achieve. One big circle with everybody that is included in a diverse, equitable society in South Africa. Moving on to the reasonable accommodation on page 12, and it says the reasonable accommodation refers to the necessary and appropriate modification and adjustments, as well as assistive devices and technology, not imposing a situation where needed in a particular case to ensure persons with disabilities the enjoyment or exercise on an equal basis with others of all human rights and fundamental freedoms. And the PAPUDA, the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, states denial of reasonable accommodation is a form of unfair discrimination. And this is even more so important with invisible impairments, with flexible work hours, with various ways how you can accommodate reasonably a person that have disclosed the invisible impairment, but I will get to that point just now. But what we are forgetting, what about caregivers? What about you as a mum or a dad working at the School of Government and you've got a child with a disability? Who is looking after your well-being? What about your family members that might have impairment, your friends? And then inclusive policies. Do you have a standalone disability policy, or is all your policy inclusive of what disability is? So it's important not to only focus on the person with the impairment employed at the School of Government, but also look at the person working there with family members or children that has impairment, and they also need support, a lot of support. So moving on to invisible impairments, and on the right-hand side there is a pictogram of people blending into each other, different colors, and only one person using a assistive device, a wheelchair, and you would not know if any of the people on that pictogram has any impairment at all. So what is an invisible impairment? It is a physical, a mental, or a neurological condition that is not visible from the outside, yet can limit or challenge a person's movement, senses, or activities. And as the name suggests, invisible disabilities are not easy to spot. And you cannot tell that a person has a disability just by looking at them. And there are many disabilities and conditions that are counted as invisible. And this is just a few. There is much, much more. MS, autism, ADHD, arthritis, brain injuries, mental illness, diabetes, epilepsy, cognitive and learning disabilities, chronic pain and fatigue. And like I've said, the list goes on. An invisible disability is an impairment or a disabling condition that cannot be seen, and most people with invisible disabilities do not go around disclosing their impairment or health problems. So they are often mistaken for able-bodied people or persons without disabilities. And that is the reality. A lot of corporates, government departments have a low disclosure rate because of the fact that there is still stigma related to invisible impairments in most cases, and it should not be. So persons with invisible disabilities are not faking it. And on the left-hand side, I've got two hands, and underneath there's a little ribbon. Just because I carry it well, it doesn't mean it isn't heavy. And inside, there are circles, and it says isolation, joy, pain and fatigue, loss, being silenced, unfair treatment and systems, dreams, expectations, looking for the good. And this is really important because, unfortunately, persons with invisible disabilities are often accused of faking or imagining these symptoms. And phrases like, but you don't look sick, or you don't look like you have a disability, are said far, far, far too often. We are facing sessions where it comes out that the staff in certain organizations and departments are self-diagnosing their fellow colleagues, saying, oh, Dani is bipolar again today. And maybe Busi sitting next to me is a person that has bipolar, but she did not disclose it. And then now she's thinking, but if they are saying that Dani looks like he's got bipolar, what must I do now? And that is reality. I'm not saying it's happening in your department, but please, that can happen. And what makes this worse is it actually stops people from talking about their invisible disability or just downplaying it, making or pretend that there is nothing wrong with them, which just makes the invisibility and the stigma even more because you are putting more and more burden on your shoulders. So while it can be very easy to think and to say, I had something similar and I just got over it, or it can't be that bad. I'm taking depression as an example. You can have depression, you can take medication. Maybe within a month or two, you are able to continue without the medication, but then you get major depression, and most likely you will be on medication for the rest of your life. So you can't compare the two. And remember, there can be a lot more to what's going on than meets the eye. I'm just going to give a couple of examples of some of the invisible impairments. Psychosocial impairments, depression, I've just mentioned. It's a mood disorder that's characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, loss of interest, and other emotional and physical symptoms. Anxiety disorders, conditions like generalized anxiety disorder, GAD. It's a panic disorder and social anxiety disorder that involve excessive worry or fear. I just want to pause here. Remember that we are living in an economy that is not doing so well. We are living in a world that is not doing so well with all the wars going on. People are still recovering from COVID, although it's been, 6, 7 years later. People are still having anxiety about a lot of things. So have a look out and just take a moment. And if your fellow colleague or even your family member is behaving all of a sudden in a different way, reach out to the person. We are all human beings. And maybe that person might speak to you, maybe not, but you can only try. Bipolar disorder, it's a mental health condition marked by extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, the mania or hypomania, and then lows similar to depression. Chronic illness and pain, chronic fatigue syndrome, it's a complex disorder characterized by extreme fatigue that does not improve with rest and may worsen with physical or mental activity. Fibromyalgia is a condition marked by widespread pain, fatigue, and other symptoms like sleep disturbances and cognitive issues, often referred to as fibrofog, like in your mind feels like a piece of sponge that doesn't want to take or process anything. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disorder that causes inflammation in joints, leading to pain and stiffness. And then lupus is also an autoimmune disease where the immune system attacks its own tissues, leading to symptoms such as joint pain, skin rashes, and fatigue. So with those chronic illness and pain flare-ups, if I can call it that way, you don't want to look after yourself. You don't want to wash. You don't want to cook. You don't want to do laundry. You just want to lie down because no medication is working for the pain that you are going through. And this is reality, and this is again where reasonable accommodation in the workplace is so important, because you might have a good day without pain. If I say without pain, you will still have pain, but let's say the pain is like unbearable. Then you feel guilty, and now you are doing more than is expected of you, and you are only going to trigger another bad. I don't want to call it a set of symptoms, but uh, just take it slow. If you do have a day that you do not have extreme pain, because you are going to worsen it, and you might be out of action for even a week or more if you overdo it. Neurological disorders, epilepsy. It's a neurological condition, and it's characterized by recurrent seizures that may not always be apparent to others. And also, not everybody with epilepsy have the same trigger points that will be very important also in the reasonable accommodation of a person with epilepsy. MS is a chronic illness that affects the central nervous system, potentially causing a range of symptoms, including fatigue, difficulty walking, and cognitive issues. Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurological disorder that affects movement and may cause tremors, rigidity and slowness of movement. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Autism spectrum disorder, a developmental disorder that affects communication and behavior, and it varies widely in its presentation and impact. And in migraine, is also a very big impairment that we come across. It's a neurological condition that can cause severe headaches, often accompanied by nausea, visual disturbances, and sensitivity to light and sound. And some persons might experience this for a day. It can last for up to a week, 2 weeks, depending on the severity of the migraine attack. Hearing loss, I did mention, it's under sensory impairments, and then visual impairments, conditions like the onset of glaucoma and other medical conditions that affect vision. So it's not only persons that's blind, but also persons with partial sight. Digestive disorders, also a very important one, and this is a tricky one because this is getting a bit personal for disclosure, and it does not need to be if you do it in the correct way and in a sensitive way. So the first one is irritable bowel syndrome, and that's a gastrointestinal disorder causing symptoms like abdominal bloating and changes in bowel habits. Inflammatory bowel disease includes conditions like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, which cause chronic inflammation in the digestive tract. And then colitis is the inflammatory bowel disease that causes chronic inflammation and ulcers in the superficial lining of the large intestine. In most of these, there is medication that the person will be using, but it can be triggered by anything that they might eat or drink, and that can also cause a person with one of these digestive disorders not being able to work for a certain number of days. And again, the reasonable accommodation. What are you going to do as a department in making sure that the person with a digestive disorder is reasonably accommodated? So myths and stigma associated with invisible impairments. First myth, invisible impairments are not real because they cannot be seen. The reality is just because a condition is not visible does not mean it is not real or impactful. Invisible impairments can affect people's daily lives and work performance just as much as visible ones. Another myth, persons with invisible impairments are less capable or less reliable. The reality is that individuals with invisible impairments can be highly capable and reliable employees. Their conditions may require specific reasonable accommodation, but they do not inherently affect the work quality or commitment. And then another myth is accommodating or reasonable accommodating employees with invisible impairments is too costly. Not so. The reason accommodation can be something like flexible work hours. It doesn't need to be expensive. And I think a lot of employers think only about the money aspect of reasonable accommodation, and that is not the way to do that. So on the left-hand side, I've got a pictogram of a seeming young lady that's fit, but the background is of an old lady with a walking sticker shadow, and it says what I look like versus what I feel like. And then I've got I'm fine on the right-hand side, but you are not fine. If you read the fine print in the word fine, the F, it's worried, in pain, depressed. The I, lonely, exhausted, hurting. The N, terrified, unable to work, feeling useless. And in the E, stressed, broken, fighting, losing hope. You are not fine. You need to speak. You need to disclose. That's the only way that your employer will be able to assist you and to help you. I'm almost coming to an end to my presentation. Addressing myths and stigma. It's by education and awareness, exactly what we are doing today with this webinar, providing training and information to employees about the nature of invisible impairments can help reduce misunderstandings and stigma, encouraging open communication, creating a culture where employees feel safe, disclosing their needs without fear of judgment or reprisal, implementing inclusive practices, adopting policies like I've mentioned in the beginning, and practices to be more inclusive and supportive of employees with various needs, including those with invisible impairments. And with that, I would like to thank you, Program Director. I'm a bit earlier than expected, but I do hope that anybody attending this session is taking away one thing, then I will be so happy. And thank you again for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. What an insightful and thought-provoking and also very informative presentation. Many, many nuggets I picked up. Starting from the beginning, nothing for us without us is a slogan that is, I think, undervalued and underappreciated in this space. Going from the bottom up before I close with my core message and core responses, addressing the stigma and myths, education and training. I think the NSG is trying hard, and we've been for the last few years promoting 2 workshops that we offer. The first workshop is managing disability management in the public service. It's a 5-day workshop, and it speaks to lots of the core issues that you raised here today. But more importantly is our 3-day workshop, which is labeled Disability Inclusion, which addresses the universal access issues and the legislative framework issues. And we developed these 2 workshops in collaboration with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. And I want to encourage everybody on the platform to please participate in these two workshops. It is really insightful, and it also assists you on how to manage disability in the workplace at the 5-day one, but more importantly, the 3-day one, the issues of universal access for persons with impairments and disabilities. Mr. Maria, thank you very much. I think if I can summarize without watering down your presentation, just some core reflections that I picked up. True inclusion begins where visibility ends. Very, very powerful statement. When systems are designed to accommodate not just what we can see, but what we understand, respect, and intentionally provide reasonable accommodation thereof. Some key talking points and takeaways from your presentation. Understanding invisible disabilities. These include mental health conditions or, as you mentioned, impairments, chronic pain, neurological impairments, learning disorders or impairments, and other invisible impairments impact participation and performance. Challenges in visibility, lack of understanding leads to stigma and isolation. Policies often cater for visible needs, leaving invisible conditions unsupported. Another key heading, building inclusive systems. This relates to the universal access issues. Embed inclusivity into recruitment, wellness, and performance frameworks. I think at the last steering committee meeting where all sectors were present, 90% of departments, public sector institutions are not meeting the percentages of employing persons with disabilities. And here we're not saying employing them only at entry level, but in all levels of government and public sector broadly. Adopt universal design principles and assistive technologies that cater to diverse needs. Here I latched on what you said about, it's not about accommodating only the employee, but the support structure and family of that employee as well. Prioritize flexible work arrangements and non-traditional accommodation modes. This latches on to what you said. It's not about money always. It's also how do you accommodate them in the circumstances that are non-money related. Leadership roles. Another core heading I picked up. Advocate openly for invisible inclusion as leaders, not just as the little administrator or employee wellness official in HR speaking about these things, but we should speak about it and advocate for it openly. Allocate resources and ensure accountability through measurable inclusion indicators. And this is the tools that Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities has developed for us to start measuring, are we actually making an impact, and how are we moving towards inclusivity, full inclusivity. And I like what you said, we must remove this other word from our vocabulary that tries to speak about integration. It's inclusivity that we should speak about. I would like to then, as an outcome for the presentation, see that an organization where invisible disabilities are acknowledged, supported, and normalized as part of a truly inclusive workplace culture. Thank you very much, Mr. Dani Maria, for your presentation. Very, very well received. I see there's some questions coming through on the Q&A. We will deal with them after the second presentation. With that said, Mr. Maria, thank you very much. Any closing remarks from your side before we move on to the next presentation?
Thank you, Program Director, for adding on. And it warms my heart that you are thinking in that way, not only you, the department. And it's not about ticking boxes. It's getting things done. That is so important. And what you mentioned about universal design and access, you can have the perfectly designed, universally accessible building or facility, but reasonable accommodation will always be a separate standalone issue. You cannot have two impairments with the same reasonable accommodation requirements. 2 persons with spinal cord injuries will not have the same needs. 2 persons with bipolar will not have the same requirements. So it's not a blanket approach. So with that, I'm going to close and thank you again. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murray.
Thank you.
Participants, if you will allow me to introduce our second presenter. Her name is Ms. Mashni Gounder. It's a small, short profile of Ms. Gounder without trying to hash her. She's a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. Mashni is a certified transformation coach with over 20 years experience partnering with leading global brands, including Netflix, Levi Strauss, to deliver impactful diversity and inclusion, leadership development, and change management solutions. She is the architect of an award-winning internship program, internationally recognized for its sustainability, and has designed and facilitated sessions worldwide on topics such as inclusive leadership, unconscious bias, psychological safety, and other critical inclusion strategies. She's known for her dynamic and engaging style. Mashni has a proven track record in coaching leaders and teams to collaborate more effectively and foster truly inclusive workplaces. Ms. Gounder, I hope I didn't leave any critical information out. With that said, I want to then hand over to you to do your presentation, and we would then conclude and wrap it up after your presentation. Thank you, Ms. Gounder, over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Craig, and hello, everyone. Thank you to Dani for that powerful grounding on the topic. So I'm with U Technologies. I'm representing U Technologies as a consultant and delivering this message to you today. U Technologies is led by our CEO, who also has a physical disability, very passionate about creating inclusive solutions for our clients. And these solutions range from technology solutions to diversity and inclusion solutions to training and a few others. So Dani explored what invisible disabilities are and why they matter. My goal in the next 40 minutes is practical, to show how technology and systems can support dignity, privacy, and the functioning for employees with invisible disabilities. So this is not intended to be a technology-driven session, but rather to explore how systems and technology can support invisible disabilities. So I'm going to begin now. Sorry, moving a bit too fast for me. Okay, so most invisible disabilities don't need ramps. They need tools. And these are everyday tools. These are, we call them quiet tools. So, and these are tools that help people manage their work without drawing attention. And I saw some comments on the Q&A as well around non-disclosure of disabilities. And I'll cover some of that now, and some of the systems and technologies that support that it doesn't actually have to be disclosed. So technology actually becomes the bridge between someone coping and someone performing at their full potential. And this offers private, practical, stigma-free support, which is important because many employees don't want to disclose their diagnosis. And they shouldn't have to diagnose their diagnosis if they are not comfortable in doing so. And in South Africa, as we know, the stigma around mental health, learning differences, chronic and neurodiversity is still very present. So discrete support is important. So technology also levels the playing field by giving people fair access to information, communication, and more flexible, productive ways of working. It reduces unnecessary barriers and gives people an equal chance to perform. It improves functioning and well-being too. So simple tools like reminders or read aloud features or even focus timers or noise control reduce the cognitive load it eases the pressure, and it helps people regulate throughout the workday. And this also enhances their independence. So employees can essentially manage their challenges quietly and confidently without needing constant help or specialized accommodations every day. And finally, technology supports consistent performance. And we know that, and Dani's alluded to that and mentioned it, and it sometimes shows up in a way of performance, and there's an assumption made the person's not performing, but actually it's due to an invisible disability. So many invisible disabilities fluctuate. Some days are easy, some days are hard. These tools help people stay steady, that they're productive. And when those systems shift, and in short, basically, these technology allows employees to get what they need safely and with dignity, which is critical. And you heard from Dani what those different invisible disabilities include, like the cognitive, the psychosocial, and the sensory differences. The good news is many tools that support these needs are already built into our everyday work apps. So before I get into the categories of the categories of supportive technology, I want to say this up front. Invisible disabilities affect people in many different ways, as you've heard that from Dani, from physically, cognitively, emotionally, and in terms of pain levels, mobility, etc. So instead of listing tools for every diagnosis, I'm grouping the tools according to the functional impact, because that's what inclusion systems are designed around. So it's how a condition shows up at work, not the name of the condition specifically. So with that in mind, there are 4 broad categories of supportive technology that we're going to look at here. And honestly, most of us already benefit from these too. As I walk through them, I want you to also silently think, which of these systems or technologies would reduce the pressure for you or even someone in your team? So the first technology, in terms of cognitive and learning support, this is really helping with things like thinking, memory, organization, reading and writing, the areas where many invisible disabilities show up, like ADHD, dyslexia, brain fog, or stress-related challenges. So tools like speech-to-text, note-taking apps, task planners, immersive readers, these make information easier to manage, and it reduces that mental load that we speak about. So these tools aren't about giving special treatment. They're simply helping people work with clarity and structure quietly and privately. Next, we have the digital tools that support emotional well-being. This is especially helpful for employees living with anxiety, depression, bipolar, PTSD, or just high levels of stress. These include mindfulness apps, mood trackers, breathing tools, and digital employee assistance program support. So they help people stay regulated and grounded during the day, not only during a crisis, but as a daily low stigma support. And looking at sensory and processing support, some employees are sensitive to sound, light, movement, and visual overload, especially neurodivergent staff or those with chronic conditions. So simple tools like noise-canceling headphones, screen filters, dark mode, visual timers, or even ergonomic seating help create a calmer, more focused workspace for an individual. These aren't luxury items. They remove barriers to concentration. So accessibility and universal design tools, these are really built to support everyone. So we want to say it's not just people with disabilities. When we talk universal, it means it should support everyone, whether you're able or not, whether you have an invisible or visible disability or not. And these look at adjustable desks, captions, screen zoom, keyboard navigation, voice notes. There are chat and collaborative platforms that reduce barriers before they even appear. So when we design systems that are flexible from the start, we reduce the need for individual accommodations and make inclusion the norm. So these tools don't replace human understanding, but they do create fairness, dignity, and independence. And in many cases, they help people succeed quietly without ever needing to disclose. There are many free or low-cost tools that are already available in South Africa. And the truth of it is, most of them are already sitting on our laptops. I'm going to highlight a few, and more importantly, what they do for people who live with cognitive overload, mental health challenges, chronic fatigue, or sensory sensitivity, and others. Microsoft accessibility tools, we have something like Immersive Reader. This helps with reading comprehension, focus, reducing visual clutter. It's great for dyslexia, ADHD, brain fog, or fatigue. It breaks the text down into manageable pieces. Dictate, where we talk about speech to text, and this allows you to speak instead of type. A major support for people with chronic pain, fatigue, ADHD, or writing challenges. Read aloud. When we read, it's reading emails and documents to you. Useful for people with concentration difficulties or visual strain, or when fatigue affects reading. Focus sessions, I use this a lot as well because I can be scattered some of the time. So I have focus sessions where I set timers on the periods. Okay, I'm going to do a session. I'm going to work on this for 30 minutes. These are built-in focus timers that schedules deep work blocks with breaks. It reduces distraction. It supports executive function and helps regulate work pace. Contrast and color filters. This is what reduces the eye strain and the visual overwhelm. Helpful for migraine, sensory sensitivity, and chronic fatigue. Live captions on Teams. I'm sure you see it all the time, Microsoft Teams. It supports hearing differences, auditory overload, cognitive processing speed. It also allows people with concentration challenges to follow along more easily. And here's some Google Workspace tools, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with as well. Live captions, where we have instant captions on Google Meet. It supports auditory processing, focus on accessibility for both neurodivergent users and English as a second language speakers. So reading mode simplifies, it's all this cluttered web pages into clean and readable text. It also reduces the cognitive load for people with brain fog or learning differences. Google also has voice typing, again, great for energy management and reducing the physical effort of typing, helpful for chronic pain, fatigue, and ADHD. And then we have Chrome extensions like Read Aloud, again, similar to what you've heard previously, also reads the text out aloud, simplifies the page, which removes any distractions. These help regulate overwhelm and help make long documents easier to process. Moving on to focus and noise regulation tools. We have tools like timers, and again, these are useful for pacing, preventing someone getting overwhelmed, breaking large tasks into small steps, ideal again for ADHD, fatigue, or even anxiety. Ambient sound playlists helps regulate mood, sustains focus, reduces intrusive noise. Noisely is another one that creates customizable soundscapes to block out distracting environments, especially helpful in open plan or noisy offices. Brain.fm, it's neuroscience-backed music that supports sustained focus and deep work. You can also use tools like, I use it a lot on YouTube. I will put on sounds, frequencies that help me focus and concentrate. And then there's simple break reminder tools, which promotes physical and cognitive pacing, incredibly helpful for chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and burnout recovery. And then there's AI support tools, not for diagnosis, not for tracking employees, but to reduce cognitive load and to make information easier to manage, because that's ultimately what your goal is. So in terms of summaries, it's turning those long documents into policies or meeting notes into short, digestible key points, supports cognitive fatigue, ADHD, stress, and anyone who struggles with large volumes of text. Simplifying long text. It's great for anxiety or PTSD, dyslexia, and second language users. Reduces, again, overwhelm instantly. Creating to-do lists. So it's transforming text or conversations into neat action steps. It's supporting people with executive function challenges. And then we have highlighting key points, which helps users stay orientated when it comes to complex information, and generating checklists, useful for memory challenges, fatigue, and high-pressure roles needing structured workflow. Imagine receiving a long, overwhelming email, the kind that makes your brain shut down halfway through. I know I have these from time to time. With one click, AI can simplify it, summarize it, or turn it into a clear checklist. Most of you are already using this, but for someone living with anxiety, ADHD, PTSD, chronic fatigue, or even cognitive overload, this isn't a convenience. This is meaningful inclusion, and it's the difference between coping and functioning. So technology tools, in terms of what I want to show you are a few more examples of tools that people in South Africa already have access to. Many of them are free or very low cost. None of these are medical treatments. Important to remember that. They're simply small, practical supports that people can use to quietly and in their own time stay regulated and during the workday. Mindfulness and mental health tools on the well-being side, the goal isn't deep therapy. It's micro support, tiny resets. These help people bring themselves back into balance. Insight Timer and apps like Headspace and Calm, these apps offer 1 to 3 minute grounding exercises, breathing practices, and short meditations. They're especially helpful for stress spikes, anxiety, cognitive overload, or emotional dysregulation. Mood tracking apps is a simple daily check-in that allows people to notice patterns in their stress or sleep or mood. And this is incredibly useful for invisible conditions such as anxiety, chronic stress, ADHD, bipolar, or trauma-related fluctuations. Built-in workplace well-being tools and many platforms we're already using, like Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Teams that include break reminders, stretch prompts, or focus timers. These help people regulate their mental load without having to disclose anything to anyone. So this category is really about regulation, small tools that help people stay centered and steady throughout the day. Memory and organization tools are really those that support memory, planning, and cognitive load, which is one of the biggest challenges for people with invisible disabilities. Things like Notion, Trello, Todoist, these tools create visual structure reminders, priority lists, timelines, and dashboards. They help people break tasks into steps, preventing, again, that overwhelm, and helps them to stay on track. Microsoft 365, To-Do Planner, there's lists. These are already available on many work laptops, and they allow people to manage tasks, to manage deadlines, follow-ups with far less cognitive strain. Why does it matter, though? For someone with ADHD, chronic fatigue, trauma, long-term illness, or even ongoing stress, structure isn't a luxury. It's a form of accessibility. It makes work more predictable, manageable, and fair. And just like the previous examples, these are not prescriptions. I'm not saying everyone must use every tool. The point is that supportive technology is already within reach for South Africans. What organizations really need is the awareness of what exists, choice for employees, and a willingness to normalize these tools so people can use them without fear or stigma. When we do that, we turn everyday technology into everyday inclusion. Now, one of the biggest strengths of technology in an inclusion context is this. People can get support without having to disclose anything. Most of the tools I've mentioned so far, things like captions, screen adjustments, timers, read aloud, these don't require a diagnosis or a form to fill in or a conversation with HR. People can simply use what they need quietly. They don't have to tell anyone. They can use it privately without any explanation to anyone. For many employees, especially in environments where stigma is still real, whether it's around mental health, learning differences, chronic illness, or fatigue, that privacy is everything. It removes the pressure of disclosure, and it replaces it with dignity and agency. And this is where technology changes the story. When someone uses a tool, you cannot tell if it's because the person has ADHD or they have anxiety or they have dyslexia or chronic pain, or they could be having a busy day. You won't know that. It normalizes support by making it universal. Let me give you a simple example. If someone turns on dictation, you don't know if they're doing it because of dyslexia, or maybe they have a wrist injury, arthritis, or just because they think faster than they type. If someone uses a focus timer, that could be ADHD or stress or just a tight deadline. Someone using captions, it might help with auditory processing, or they might just be in a very noisy environment. I, for example, when I think about captions, when I'm watching on streaming platforms, captions are always on. And strangely enough, I tend to read the captions more than I listen to the audio. I've gotten used to that. So you can't really tell the difference. And this is where that non-disclosure part comes in, where people, if they don't have that level of comfort about disclosing, they can go off on their own and make use of all these technologies that's available. Technology makes support invisible in the best way because it blends into everyday behavior. Now, safe disclosure doesn't mean hiding it. It means choice. Some people are happy to disclose and ask for adjustments. Others only want HR to know through confidential digital channels. And some prefer anonymous well-being check-ins. Others just want the option to use tools without telling anyone at all. This is why systems matter. Digital forms can route accommodation requests straight to the HR person, not a whole chain of managers. Role-based access limits to who sees sensitive information. Anonymous well-being data can show a trend, for example, that the team is overwhelmed without pointing fingers at individuals. All of these create safety without forcing disclosure. And here's a small reflection for you. Think of one tool you would personally use if you didn't have a disability, or if you had a disability. What would that tool be? Would it be captions? Would it be timers? A mood check-in app? That's exactly how employees with invisible disabilities want to feel, supported without being spotlighted. The goal isn't secrecy, it's dignity. Technology gives people the freedom to choose what they share and when they share it, who they share it with. And that is the cornerstone of psychological inclusion. All right, so this next part is about how we use technology, not just as a fix for individuals, but to actually build work systems that include everyone from the start. When we do this well, people don't have to disclose anything personal to get support because the system already supports them. And we talk about building for everyone, a universal design. That just means designing things in a way that works for as many people as possible, especially people with invisible disabilities. I'll take another example completely off topic. If you think about one person in a family needs to lose a bit of weight and needs to start eating healthy, and then that person always feels like the sore thumb sticking out. Doesn't have to be. But if the whole family adopts this healthier lifestyle, that's kind of a universal design, that the whole family is doing it so that one person doesn't feel like they're sticking out like a sore thumb. Simple things make a huge difference, like keeping documents clean and readable, letting people choose between chat or voice instead of forcing only meetings or sharing recordings and notes afterwards. When you build the system with everyone in mind, fewer people fall through the cracks. And again, no one has to disclose anything again to get what they need. Make accessibility the default. And accessibility shouldn't be something we switch on after someone struggles. It should be already part of the default settings. So that might look like always turning on captions in Teams or Zoom, or making sure our PDFs and slides work with screen readers, or it could be checking the color contrast or using tools like Immersive Reader. When the organization builds this in, nobody feels singled out. Normalize the tools through onboarding and modeling. People use what they see leadership using. It's that simple. So if leaders start to turn on captions and they start using timers, digital whiteboards, you'll see that everyone starts to use it too because they start to feel comfortable using it. This is where onboarding helps as well. It's a short accessibility orientation where it's a quick start guide with digital tools and leaders modeling these behaviors. Once leaders normalize the tools, stigma disappears and the usage goes up. So provide multiple communication pathways. This is very important. People communicate differently because of their disability, could be because of their stress level or their language comfort, or even just the kind of day they're having. So the more options we give, the more inclusive the system becomes. Some people prefer chat because it reduces social pressure. Others like voice notes because writing is tiring. I'm one of those people. Some people prefer structured emails. And sometimes a quick call is best when nuance matters. The real point here is choice. Choice removes that pressure. And we want to blend technology with manager-led human support. Technology is fantastic, but it can't replace human empathy. Managers play a huge role here, allowing some flexibility with deadlines when possible, encouraging people to use the tools without feeling shame, offering private check-ins, asking, how can I support your work style? How can I support you better? When you combine technology with empathy, that's when you're creating psychological inclusion. So when organizations do these 5 things well, inclusion stops being a favor or an exception. It becomes predictable, it's consistent, and simply part of how work gets done, which is what we're aiming for. AI is one of the most powerful tools we have today for psychological inclusion, especially for invisible disabilities, because it acts as a quiet assistant in the background without drawing attention to the person who needs the support. So let me give you a few examples. One of the biggest challenges for people with ADHD, anxiety, depression, dyslexia, chronic pain, etc., is the cognitive load. That's that mental effort needed to process information. So AI tools like text simplifiers and AI writing assistants can help long, complex information, turn it into something that's clear and manageable. So instead of an employee struggling for 2 hours to write an email or understand a policy document, AI helps them get it done in minutes. It's done quietly, privately, without having to ask for help. And that increases their level of independence. AI-generated summaries are incredibly helpful for people with fatigue, concentration challenges, or memory difficulties. Imagine someone who has anxiety or struggles to keep up in fast-paced meetings. Instead of stressing about taking notes or missing important details, they can simply read a short, accurate summary afterwards. It gives equal access to information without that pressure. AI can also help people manage their energy and workload. For example, blocking focus time automatically, giving gentle reminders, helping plan tasks based on urgency. Suggesting breaks is another one. These features can reduce the overwhelm that often comes with invisible disabilities. And it's not about micromanaging people. It's about giving them tools that support consistency and supports the calm. You want people to be calm, comfortable. Private well-being prompts. This is important in South Africa, where trust and privacy are huge concerns. AI can offer gentle check-in prompts, breathing exercises, short well-being reminders, stress reduction suggestions. But as this is critical, it must never become surveillance. That's very important. I want to say that again. It's critical, but it should never become surveillance. AI should support and not monitor. Employees need to trust that these tools are optional, it's private, and not linked to performance. AI-powered captions and translations are a game changer for people with hearing loss, auditory processing challenges, language barriers, or even concentration difficulties. Imagine being able to follow a meeting with accurate captions or having a translation when English isn't your strongest language. It opens the door for people to participate with confidence. So the real opportunity with AI is this. It quietly supports psychological well-being and cognitive functioning without requiring someone to say, I have an invisible disability. When used ethically and sensitively, AI becomes a way to protect dignity, reduce pressure, and create equal participation at work. I want to start this particular slide by saying that when we talk about systems, it also talks to the culture and appetite in the organization to make changes. Technology can only take us this far. It can only take us so far. It becomes meaningful only when the system around it allows people to use it without fear, without stigma, and without the bureaucracy. So here are the core systems organizations can put in place to make invisible disabilities truly supported. When we talk about clear, safe accommodation and privacy processes, people will not use tools if they feel unsafe. So the first system change is simple. It's clarity. Employees need to know how to request support, who will see their information, how will privacy be protected. And in South Africa, the stigma around mental health, ADHD, learning differences, we know it's real. And a transparent, respectful process is what helps break that fear. Universal digital accessibility tools for everyone. And this is where organizations really shift the culture. Instead of giving accessibility tools only to those who disclose, make them available to everyone up front. Built-in captions, read aloud tools, focus modes, immersive reader. When everyone has them, nobody feels out of place. It becomes normal to use tools that make work easier. Confidential support channels and multiple access routes. Some people won't speak on a call. Some people won't send an email. Some people may prefer a chat function or WhatsApp line or even an employee assistance program portal. By offering multiple pathways, all confidential, that are all confidential, you remove that obstacle of, I don't know where to go, or I don't want to be judged. This is crucial when it comes to invisible disabilities. Manager training in inclusive tech-enabled leadership is critical. And this is often the missing piece in organizations. Even if the tools exist, managers need to understand how to respond with empathy, how to offer options, and how to normalize the use of supportive technology. It's not about diagnosing, it's about saying, how can we make this easier for you? That one line can change a career. Dedicated budget and accessible procurement rules. When there's no budget, everything becomes a fight. Organizations should set aside even a small ring-fence budget for assistive technology. And procurement must prioritize accessibility. If you're buying software or platforms, accessibility must be a not negotiable feature, not an afterthought, because then you're being reactive rather than proactive. And we're building barriers when we do that as well. And then we look at anonymous trends data for system improvements. This is important. We must move away from relying on individual pleas for help. Use anonymous data from HR, your EAPs, disability hotlines, and tech usage patterns to understand what the system needs. That way, you fix the environment and not the individual. Psychologically safe pathways for support is where people must be able to seek help without feeling exposed or judged. This means reinforcing the message that support is normal. You don't have to disclose everything, and private tools exist for a reason. The ethical use of AI and support, this is important, where we say it's not surveillance. With AI becoming part of the workplace, we must be very careful. AI should reduce cognitive, administrative, and emotional load, not monitor behavior or track productivity. Employees must know AI is there to help them, not to watch them. Trust is the foundation of inclusion. So in short, supportive tools create access, but systems is what creates the safety. When both are in place, then employees don't just survive, they thrive. I want to close by saying invisible disabilities don't need special treatment. They need thoughtful systems. Technology can't replace empathy, but it can amplify dignity, privacy, and performance. When we get this right, we're not only supporting people with invisible disabilities, we're creating workplaces where everyone can work with more ease, more confidence, and belonging. And you don't, as organizations, that's often the thing you think, oh, there's so much to do. You don't have to do everything at once. Start with one visible change. Turn captions on by default in meetings. Add read aloud or immersive reader to shared documents. Model the tools so people know they're welcome to use them. Then pick one system that creates pressure and ask, does this reduce pressure or increase pressure? That one question alone can shift how we design work, communication, and expectations. Remember, inclusion is not about getting it right all the time. We're going to make mistakes. It's about learning from that mistakes. It's trial and error. We're testing. We fine-tuning all the time. It's about learning. It's about experimenting. It's about listening and adjusting. So small choices done consistently is what creates lasting inclusion. And I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gounder, for a very, very insightful presentation. The number of notes I made is amazing. I don't know if I should go through them all or just highlight a few, and then I'll wrap up with my prepared notes. The tools are astounding. I mean, I've been working with a number of them over a long period of time, and if you don't really physically, I always say listening is a skill. If you don't set your mind on what the tool does, you'll never realize the power that it has and the impact it can have on the diverse amount of people that you work with as a manager, as a staff member, as a leader, as an executive. So yes, it's amazing. I'm going to highlight just a few, and then I'll go to my prepared notes. Starting with the categories, amazing. I'm going to just list them: cognitive, sensory, mental health, access, and universal design. I'm not going to go into that. That was amazing. We will share the presentation with all participants in the forum. The tools that are there, Microsoft, Google, practical tech tools, we don't realize the power of the software we have on our machines. I think we use probably 40%, and that is being ambitious when I say 40% of the capability of the license you have on your machine. I've been recently exposed to Chrome and Google and all the additional features of these two licenses and what they can do for you in the workplace to accommodate invisible impairments and disabilities. The issue of disclosure, critical. I mean, our HR departments are often saying you need to disclose in order to be reasonably accommodated. But how accommodating are the procedures to disclose? And how does it protect my dignity and my privacy in the process? Very, very insightful remarks you made there, and the tools we can use to do that. The one point I picked up there was tools are private and should be stigma-free. I shouldn't feel in any way stigmatized or other when I disclose. Inclusive work systems. The point I picked up there out of the whole presentation was combine tech with empathy, and that would lead to inclusion. And of course, throughout all of the tools, the common thread that I picked up, or that I picked up as a participant when I'm not program directing, was AI. For me, AI is a very powerful tool. I think we underutilize it sometimes just to do summaries for us, but it's got so much more potential, and there's so many tools you can use every day more and more. It's being added to the list. And then, of course, systems, or what we put in place there with regard to universal digital accessibility tools. I like the issue of managers being trained in inclusive and the use of tools. And then your conclusion, your conclusory remarks, I said, ask yourself the question, does it reduce pressure or does it increase pressure? Ms. Kaunda, thank you very much for your presentation. It was well received. I think the audience also appreciated it, and you can see the questions are coming through in the Q&A. So just to wrap up your presentation, some awareness and recognition issues I want us to pick up on is that many of us live with invisible challenges, mental health conditions, chronic illnesses, and neurodiversity that require an understanding, not sympathy. Awareness campaigns and sensitivity training are the first steps to change, and this is what we're trying to do today. Support systems, establish safe, confidential disclosure channels. They develop peer support networks, mentorship programs, and inclusive wellness initiatives. How do we embed inclusion? Through incorporating invisible disabilities in diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI frameworks. We train managers in empathetic leadership with accountability for creating psychological safe environments. And then the empathetic leadership action is to lead conversations that celebrate courage, not concealment, and recognize that invisible strength often drives invisible success. Those were my remarks to conclude on your presentation, Ms. Mashni Kaunda. I hope I did justice to the brief summary and the brief notes that I picked up as key pointers. Any concluding remarks from your side, Ms. Kaunda, before we go into the Q&A?
Thank you so much for that, Craig. Yes, and that is a good summary. And as you rightfully put, I think the theme there is so much available to us that we don't even realize that it's there. And I think companies need to shy away, because when we think disability, we're always focusing on the visible disabilities. And this is where the systems fall down, and employers think, I've got too much to put in place and I can't afford that, or I don't have the capacity. But these are all available. And I think it needs to be a cultural shift, a mindset shift from the organization. That is why I say this was not about technology. When we talk systems, it's the cultural and mindset thing that needs to kick in first. And that open-mindedness is what sets the tone for how you implement it. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And thank you for the opportunity.
You are welcome. Thank you very much, Ms. Kaunda. With that done, then, I think we've reached the point where we're going to ask our participants now to participate. And I will read the questions, and I would then open the floor to both yourself and Mr. Dani Maree to respond to the questions as you see fit. So I'm going to go to the questions and read them from the top, succinctly those that have not been responded to by our team in the background. So some of the questions asked about, will the slides be presented? I think our team in the background has responded to those already, because those are generic questions. So the first question, I'm going to read 3 of them or 2 of them, and I'm going to pause and give the 2 of you a chance to respond. From C. Koza, she's asking, morning, I joined late due to password. My question, what is universal access? I want to be clear and have a clear understanding of what this means. And Mr. Rolamani says, how can we contribute towards moving the white paper to an act, which means from a draft to legislation? We are on the 10th year now of the white paper. I'm going to pause there before I go to the next one, and I'm opening the floor to any one of the 2 of you to respond to that one. Would you like to take that, Dani, the universal access?
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for the 2 questions. I think that, Mashni, you explained universal design in also quite a very nice way, but I'm going to not even read from a document. I'm going to explain it in how I perceive it. So universal design is how you will design anything that you are going to use throughout your lifetime, whether it's this pen, a table, a desk, a building, a ATM, anything that you are going to use without being assisted by somebody to use it or to add on something to use it. So it must be designed and planned to be usable by the broader population, taking things in consideration like different languages, different cognitive comprehension of signage, for example. And very important is that it's not for persons with disabilities only. It's for the broader population. Think about different body sizes. Think about different languages. A lot of people are walking around with 2 handbags, a laptop bag, and are battling to fit through a turnstile. That is not universal design. Universal design would have been that all the turnstiles are bigger and the same size. So we are no longer looking at accessible parking or accessible toilet. It is for the broader population. So I hope that is quite clear and covered. That is just my version of universal design, but important, it's for the broader population throughout your lifetime. And then I cannot answer you about the Disability Act because we as the disability sector are also frustrated in the slowness in which this is happening. I think it was last year, the president announced at the Transport Summit that the act is going to be published last year already, but then it was announced that it will take another 2 years. And our questions is that the white paper was developed through the inputs from everybody in the sector, researchers, well-known researchers. So we do not know what else do government require input-wise from the sector, the disability sector, to make this an official act. Countries like America, Australia, the UK that's got their acts, they are achieving things. I'm going to give you one example, and I may go off the point here. We, as the National Council Often for Persons with Disabilities, have been battling for almost 14 years to get a national parking disc for a person using a wheelchair or a white cane to use the accessible parking base nationalized because of the conflict in the various departments. If we had an act, it would have been resolved within 2 years, within a year. So I cannot answer that question in why and when, but let's be positive, and hopefully it will be sooner than the 2 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. Any additions you want to add, Ms. Kaunda?
No, I think you've covered it perfectly, Dani. Thank you. I mean, we could open a whole can of worms if we start to talk about the pace. So I'm not going to go there.
No, this is true. This is true. I mean, I sit on the steering committee, and we made inputs now to the G20 also to try and get us moving from a discussion document to legislation. And the fact that it is not an act yet doesn't mean nothing is being done. Lots of work is being done in the background. It's just the wheels turn slowly sometimes, and then at other times you jump a few hurdles, and it seems like it's moving fast, and then there's a lull again in progress. So thank you very much for those inputs, colleagues. I'm going to read some more questions now. And I think this one is for you, Rashni. Is the AI tools like Summarize and Captions and so forth already available to be used by departmental employees, or should they be set up by IT? Let me see if there's another one related to the tools. Declaring your disability might affect one's promotion at work as employers threaten sick employees. Most employees are scared as they will be regarded as ineffective. So I'm going to pause there. The last one is something else. So the one relates to the AI tools, and the second one relates to your disclosure issues. Thank you, Rosh.
I'll talk about the AI tools. And I mean, if you talk, I'm assuming you're referring to departmental as in government employees. If you're using Microsoft systems, you will have a whole host of tools already available. If you're making use of Google, you will have. There might be, and again, it's as per your IT policies internally, there might be some that are restricted. But I can tell you offhand, with most organizations, there's a lot of already included tools that are available, assistive tools, accessibility tools, and AI tools that are already available. So if there's anything more, I want to say more complex than that that's required, there may be some rules internally from your IT security perspective, but it's definitely available already.
Thank you for that one. Any additions, Tani? Oh, are you still busy? Sorry, continue.
No. I was looking at the second question, but I'm thinking that's maybe Dani wants to. I want to comment. Maybe Dani wants to comment on the declaring your disability.
You can
but Dani,
go
did you have
ahead,
anything? So yeah, look, it's again. I'm saying this. It's that stigma, and it's a South Africa, the culture here. I don't think we are there yet where we are feeling comfortable, because I hear that from employers all the time. Employees are not disclosing their disability because it may affect promotion. And it's a cultural shift that's needed, not in the organization, it's in the country, it's needed. And it probably starts with the work that's being done around the policy work. So it's a tricky one. I don't think there's an answer for it, because it's something that needs to transform over time. And we need to normalize where there's an acceptance and respect and understanding around the different disabilities. And again, it's looking beyond the disability, because behind the person with the disability, physical or visible or invisible, are a set of skills that you may be missing out on. You are short-sighted with that. I'll hand over to you, Dani, if you've got something to comment on.
Inputs from you, Dani?
Yes, most definitely. So true, but you are saying, and the misconception is still there. Example, a person that's blind can only work at the switchboard. Nonsense. There is no such thing. A person using a wheelchair cannot be promoted because the exco office is on the 5th floor and there's no lift. We've got so much legislation, and you mentioned it. Currently in South Africa, we are one of the most fortunate countries. The PAPURA, the Constitution, nevertheless, the Disability Act, let's put that aside. But you don't want to get to a point where you are threatening your employer with legislation. That person, your manager, your supervisor, needs to see. And Marshall, you just mentioned it. Don't look at the impairment. Look at the person and what that person can contribute to the organization or to the department. So there should not be that hold back, that scaredness of, if I'm going to disclose, I'm not going to be promoted. Even people applying for work, and that situation we experience every day with inquiries. They are asking us, must I indicate that I've got the disability, invisible disability, when I apply for this job, because I might not get it, because now stigma, understanding. You can't assume that everybody is educated enough to think that a person with a certain impairment can do the same work than a person without a disability.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And I also wanted to say, you can't measure the performance of an employee with an impairment against the same criteria as an employee if you didn't reasonably accommodate that person. The questions related to the workshops that the NSG offer, I will answer later. I want to go to the questions that's related to the seminar, the webinar. The next two questions speaks to, is the AI tools like summarize? We did that one, isn't that so?
Yes, yes, we did.
The last one, declaring a disability might affect one's promotion. Now that we did that one as well. So it's the questions I must answer. So people are asking, where can we access the 5-day disability management training that the NSG offers and the 3-day disability inclusion workshop? NSG has fully automated its training management system. So you go on our website and you request the training or a quotation for training through our website. If you're having difficulty accessing our website, you can then also drop an email to our contact center at the nsg.gov.za, and they will most certainly send you a step-by-step guide on how to request a quotation for those 2 courses. I don't see any more questions. We've had a number of questions that were answered by our team in the background. Thank you very much to you for the excellent work you've done in the background. I'm going to allow Dani and then Mashni to give closing remarks in that order, and then I will close the webinar officially. Dani?
Thank you, Craig. And once again, thank you for the active participation from the members that joined this webinar. We as the presenters always don't know what is happening perceived takeaways from sessions like this, but from the questions that came out, I can see that people are thinking, and I wish you all the best going forward with this initiative that you are driving, and that it will not end on the 3rd of December, because a lot of people are only focusing on drum, and we are saying, like you are saying, impairment, it's something that is there forever. You need to work on it forever. Our duty as an organization working often for persons with disabilities will only end once everybody with impairment in South Africa has got job, has got reasonable accommodation, has got access to basic education, transport, etc. So we have a lot to do, and together with you and similar companies and organizations and departments that is thinking in the same way, we will be able to achieve an inclusive, equitable, diverse society in South Africa and in the workplace. And I'm truly confident that you will steer this process and make a huge success of that. And thank you again for the opportunity, and all of the best for the rest of your day and activities.
Thank you very much, Dani. Much appreciated. Your input was valuable, and we will call on you again in the future when we roll out some more of these initiatives. I will say why in my closing remarks. Over to you, Ms. Gandon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Craig. So I want to start by saying, keep the conversations going. Don't shy away from it. Don't avoid it, because I think culturally we tend to shy away from it. We walk on eggshells around these topics. Let's normalize having these conversations. So whether you have an invisible, visible disability or not, have these conversations, because sometimes we put our foot in it if we say something that may offend somebody because we don't know enough about it, because we're not talking about enough about it. And I say, I think you saw in my last slide, how do you eat an elephant? Bite by bite, small bites. We don't have to do everything. Start small. So it could be some basic technologies and systems that you put in place. Start small, but start somewhere, so you've got somewhere to work from. and also exploring what's out there. I mean, and I've said it earlier, there is so much available which we don't even know about, and people are in workplaces that are thinking, how am I going to function? And again, as organizations, it's important to create that awareness around, do you know, without having people to disclose, do you know that we have these technologies available? So you don't have to say what it is, but you can make use of it. And also just to say systems, to end is to say systems, like I said earlier, goes beyond the technology side. The system starts with a culture shift and mindset change. So, and that's where real transformation happens. So the technology alone is not enough. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. This was really great. I enjoyed this.
Thank you, Ms. Condon. And yes, the mind shift is the most important thing, because learning and unlearning and relearning starts in the mind. So if you can get the mind right, you can get many other things right. Thank you very much for your insightful presentation, Ms. Condon. It was appreciated, and I think we will extend the relationship in other avenues as well, because the NSG does a series of other work as well, and your resume was very appealing to me for some other things that I also do, likewise with Dani as well. So thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much, participants, people who registered for the webinar. Our team in the background will share the presentations with each and every one of you. And also we will try and share also some of the responses that we answered or made available in the chat. My closing message then, as the program director of this webinar, would be, let us commit ourselves into fostering workplaces that humanizes leadership by transforming awareness into meaningful action and building trust through empathy and respect for each other. Inclusion is not an act of charity. It is an act of vision. When we choose to see beyond appearances, we unlock potential that redefines what it means to belong, to lead, and to serve. Let us build workplaces where silence is replaced by understanding, invisibility with recognition, and difference with dignity. Because every unseen story holds the power to inspire, to lead, and to transform. To answer the issue of DRUM, the Minister has declared in our last steering committee meeting that DRUM is no longer a 30-day campaign. It is now a 365-day campaign, which then answers you, Dani, by saying it is not only for a certain period of time. It is for every day and every year that we need to be fighting this battle to bring awareness out there, to bring inclusivity, to promote universal access, so that we can then be a one society and not a stereotypical society. With those closing remarks, colleagues, friends, participants, I thank you. The webinar is closed.